Hi, I'm Dr. Amit Agarwal, naturopathic doctor and psychotherapist. I'm practicing in Kenya at the moment, running mobile clinics and private practice as well. And I want to share some exciting information on how we can use homeopathy and Bach flowers to treat anxiety and depression and other emotional illnesses. The key take-home message I want to give today is that emotional illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of these things, including actually physical symptoms, can have a trigger, an emotional trigger from the past, what we call trauma or shock. And this shock can be financial loss, sexual abuse, parents fighting, a relationship breakup, divorce, whatever it is. These events will alter the person's life. It'll alter their perception of themselves. It'll alter their behavior. It'll alter their interpretation of the environment around them. It'll make them feel less secure, more threatened. All these effects actually have a long-term impact on a person's life and contribute towards emotional illness such as anxiety, depression, chronic illness, even bipolar and schizophrenia at times. So the idea is when a person comes to you with anxiety or depression or any other symptom, find out the root cause, right? And if it does stem from an emotional issue or an emotional event, then treat that emotional event while you're doing all the other supplementations and adrenal support and all that. It's important to actually resolve the shock. And that's where homeopathy can work really well, I'm finding. So I also use psychotherapy. However, I'm finding homeopathy can do the same, if not better, in really going deep into undoing traumatic events from a person's history. So we're all used to using homeopathy constitutionally, doing a detailed case intake, and I definitely recommend doing that still. It's very important. However, while finding the constitutional remedy, it's equally important to actually look at the shocks in the person's life, any significant life events that happen to them, and then choose a remedy based on those shocks. And I'm going to show you how. And then also when you're looking at the shocks, look at them in sequential order. Most recent first, treat that, and then move backwards in time until you get to childhood traumatic events. So how do you find a remedy to treat the shock? Well, Kent's repertory and a couple of other repertories have a great chapter called Mind Ailments From. And Mind Ailments From deals with specific traumatic events in a person's life and actually gives you remedies to heal those traumatic events. So for example, if you look in your repertory, you'll find mind ailments from abuse. You'll see remedies such as ignatia, aurum, staphylos aureus, sexual abuse, carcinosin, ignatia, nux vomica, staphylos aureus again. Mind ailments from shame, we have aurum, ignatia, natmur, opium, staphylos aureus. Ailments from violence, we have aurum, bryonia, coffea. So the good thing is you will actually see some common remedies coming up: staphylos aureus, opium, ignatia, aurum. These remedies often you'll see them occurring quite often in various chapters of the repertory for ailments from significant events in a person's life. So before I go on to the other chapters or rubrics that deal with trauma, how do we select the right remedy? Number one, you look at the symptoms of a person in the present moment. So are they crying a lot, or are they suicidal? So a lot of suicidal feelings often indicates aurum. Are they timid and holding back a lot of feelings? Then you're looking at staphylos aureus. If they appear weak, broken, poor memory, just fatigued, then you're looking at phosphoric acid. So look at the present symptoms and then select a remedy according to that, and see if it also matches the event that they went through. Or you could also ask, how did they initially react to the shock? Were they stunned, numb, speechless? Then you're looking at opium as a remedy. Aconite will also fit. Aconite is has more fear symptoms in it as well, and there's a lot of fear and paranoia after the event. Some homeopaths will actually use 4 or 5 different remedies all at one go, spaced maybe half an hour apart, or given all in the same day, or one day after the other. So let's say somebody's been through sexual abuse and there's carcinosin, aurum, and ignatia. They'll give all of those 3 remedies spaced about a day apart to deal with all parts of the shock. Some homeopaths will disagree with this approach. However, I've definitely seen it work with a lot of people. And yeah, if it works for you, then give it a try. Use low dose when you're doing multiple remedies, just so as not to overwhelm the person. And also then you can monitor the response a bit more clearly and then decide to increase the dose of the remedy that's working well for them. You can also use energetic testing and intuition to select remedies from a narrowed down list. So let's go on to the other rubrics that mind ailments has. So you're looking at mind ailments from love disappointed, ailments from disappointment, friendship deceived, discords between parents. And this is a really interesting one, actually. I've treated a lot of patients who grew up in an unstable home environment. Either their mom was being beaten or abused by the father, or they were just arguing. And graphites has come up quite often with that. And I've actually treated eczema resulting from childhood stress using graphites. And then when I investigated further, most of the stress had come from their parents fighting. And you'll notice in a lot of these rubrics, ailments from love disappointed, disappointment, and friendship deceived, we'll see some common remedies coming up, such as aurum, ignatia, leaky, phosphoric acid. Phosphoric acid is a great remedy for burnout, fogginess, and just feeling broken after an event. And I'll cover more details later on specific remedies. There's another remedy that has piqued my interest. It's carcinosin. Given when a child has grown up with too much domination from their parents and they actually develop rebellious kind of symptoms because they're trying to create boundaries for themselves. And so they start doing that. They start rejecting the environment around them. And carcinosin is a good one to really dispel some of those energetic influences from the past. Other rubrics from bad news, death of a loved one, sight of an accident, from fright. All these are external events happening. Common remedies we'll see here are gelsemium, aconite, arsenicum, and opium. Ignatia is also one. Fright, ailments from fright has hyoscyamus and stramonium as well. I like these 2 remedies because they really deal with anxiety well. If somebody is quite unstable, slightly delusional, paranoid, I find ignatia, hyoscyamus and stramonium, which belong to the same family, they work really well, especially when you see fear of the darkness. Stramonium is quite well indicated. I've had some patients who were in the Westgate terrorist attack in Kenya, where terrorists actually murdered, shot, blew up a lot of people right in front of their eyes. Of course, aconite was a fantastic remedy during this event. However, I found a lot of people needed opium because when they witnessed the so-called accident or terrorist attack, they were numb. Their body just, or their mind just escaped from the event. So they could not even relate to what happened. Their body wouldn't allow them to go to that place because it was too traumatic. So giving opium in low dose will subtly allow a person to come out of trauma or PTSD in a safe manner, so that even when you're doing counseling, actually, they'll go through counseling much more gently. Also, ailments related to business stuff and failures in like money, financial issues. We have a bunch of rubrics here, and also from stress. So we have mind ailments from mental exertion, mind ailments from failure, business failure, ambition disappointed. Nux vomica comes up quite often here, strongly indicated. And then you have other remedies such as calcarea carbonicum, calc-phos. Cuprum is also a good one for workaholics. We will see phosphoric acid come up again. That's for burnout, mental fatigue, forgetfulness. Great remedy in any significant anxiety and depression. In fact, I'd use phosphoric acid If the person has experienced burnout in their life and they're not manifesting those symptoms now, I will still give phosphoric acid, because that burnout feeling and that stress is stored somewhere in the person's body, and homeopathy can get to it. And so the acids are very well indicated for burnout. Keep those in mind: picric acid, phosphoric acid, fluoric acid. And there's an interesting rubric I found: mind ailments from alcoholism. So if somebody's a recovering alcoholic or they've recovered completely, part of their mind and their body is affected. Of course, their liver is affected. So you're looking at using arsenicum and nux vomica to help move the liver around. I'll often use sulfur to reduce cravings in alcoholics or recovering alcoholics. And sulfur is a great one because I'm finding a lot of alcoholics can be very, very intelligent and intellectually justify their habits. Sulfur reduces the intensity of those justifications, I'm finding. So let's cover a few remedies in a bit more detail. The first one is Aurum. Great remedy for depression. Great remedy, especially when there's suicidal tendencies. So the Aurum person has a lot of high expectations for themselves. So when an event happens, let's say they fail in something, they tend to blame themselves a lot and go through a lot of regret. And if they are neglected by someone or they go through a breakup, then they have a lot of sense of worthlessness, feeling lonely, and just very sensitive to criticism. Because they're feeling useless, they don't want feedback. They have a lot of suicidal thoughts, and people who have attempted to commit suicide a lot, I would use Aurum in low dose in the beginning, just to make sure that they don't aggravate on those symptoms. Like I said, because they have high expectations of themselves, they'll go through a lot of guilt, shame, and regret, and they blame themselves a lot. Yeah, and that makes their depression worse, of course. What I'm finding also is if you find someone who prays a lot obsessively and has the other symptoms as well, Aurum is quite well indicated there as well. And if you look at Scholten's chart of elements for the homeopathic remedies indicated according to mind symptoms, religiousness comes up a lot in the bottom column where Aurum is located. Calcarea carbonica is for people who are overwhelmed, who have pushed themselves so far that they're just burnt out. They're overwhelmed with managing too many events, too much work, even managing a wedding, for example, in the midst of work. They just burn themselves out very quickly. And in their burnout state, they feel a lot of discouragement, confusion, a lot of anxiety can happen. They break down crying quite often. A lot of self-pity as well going on, like poor me feeling. I don't deserve this sort of feeling. Now, Calcarea carbonica people are quite insecure, so they worry about their health and their job security. The thing is, when they burn out, though, they're less capable of performing well, so that gives them even more anxiety. Calcarea carbonica is also good for people who are affected easily by bad news. So if you have someone with anxiety and depression, and you're wondering, okay, what remedy to use, and then you find out, okay, they're easily affected by watching the TV, bad news on TV, or they just don't like hearing about bad things happening to relatives, then definitely think about Calcarea carbonica. Ignatia is one of the first remedies I think of when somebody's gone through grief and disappointment or some shock, especially heartbreak and humiliation. They suffer from anxiety mixed with depression and fear. There's a lot of fear in Ignatia. And they tend to keep their tears back. They keep their feelings inside when they're around people. And they cry a lot when they're alone. It's a deep state of anguish, actually, Ignatia people have. The key symptoms of Ignatia are sighing a lot and feeling of a lump in their throat. And they can be, despite their vulnerable state or weak feelings, they can become quite angry with people and overly sensitive when somebody contradicts them, which is different from Staphysagra, because Staphysagra is more timid and holds their feelings back. But Ignatia, because they're so vulnerable and raw and everything's bottled up inside, they can't hold it in any longer. They just need to retaliate and push people back as soon as they feel threatened. And that's part of the dealing or rejecting the humiliation that happened to them. So great remedy to use. Even if Orm is indicated for a deep depression, if somebody has gone through significant humiliation in their life or death of a loved one or a relationship breakup in their past and are depressed now, I will often give Ignatia as a backup remedy to undo the stress from the traumatic event. So Ignatia is great for peeling away stress that lingers in the body. Caliphos is one of the best remedies I've seen for nervous exhaustion. I also use it in tissue salt form, so you can take it more often. It just builds up the adrenal glands much faster. Caliphos is for people who have overworked themselves and suffered long emotional stress, like continuous stress. They're so burnt out, their concentration is poor, and so they lose their confidence quite easily, similar to Calcarea carbonica. With Caliphos, they feel very overwhelmed easily once they lose their confidence from not being able to perform well, which makes them even more nervous and even more depressed. With Caliphos, the key thing to look for is their nerves are raw, so they're quite sensitive to light and noise and stimulus, external stimulus, and can actually suffer from insomnia quite easily. And that's where Caliphos in tissue salt form can work really well. I find people who need the acids or even caliphosphoricum and any form of like burnout, depression, I always give adrenal support with them, whether it's rhodiola, ashwagandha, or a nice B complex. So keep that in mind as well. Nutrition is very important, even though you're treating homeopathically. Natrium muriaticum is probably one of the favorites of most homeopaths when it comes to relationship breakups and senses of betrayal and just general unwellness. Natrium muriaticum is also great when there's issues with the mother, neglect from the mother, or early separation in childhood, going to boarding school, or even divorce cases, especially when the child had to remain with the father. Natrium muriaticum people internalize their grief quite a lot, and they hold on to their grief for a long time. They dislike discussing their emotions, and they don't cry very easily, and they prefer to be left alone. So they're quite sensitive, and they don't like being consoled. In fact, they might retaliate or just reject you if you try and console them. Because they internalize and hold on to their feelings for a very long time, these are the people who tend to be more resentful and feel mistrustful for people who have hurt them in the past. They don't get over their hurt so easily. In private, they do cry quite a bit, and music makes them cry. So certain music moves them to tears. So that's a key indication to use, to look for when you're thinking about giving Natmur. Now, another symptom I find, Natmur people tend to be quite over-responsible in life, or duty-bound, intellectual types, and they can also be prone to headaches. So those are great indications for Natrium muriaticum as well. Nux vomica, the elixir of liver detox. Nux vomica is great for people who are irritable. They get upset easily, and that's because of the liver picture related to Chinese medicine. When the liver is stagnant, irritability increases. It's like the fire rising in a person. Nux vomica people are irritable with business matters, or if things are not in their correct place, they're very meticulous. They're stressed out. They're very stressed out people. Now, stress in a person's life, of course, increases liver stagnation. Stress causes us to breathe more shallow, so we don't use our diaphragm to full capacity. And when your diaphragm is not massaging your liver, when it's not used to full capacity, your liver does not detoxify well enough, and hence the liver stagnation that comes from chronic stress. So I find Nux vomica is a great remedy to reduce some of the side effects of stress, such as liver stagnation, gas, bloating, constipation. And because constipation, gas, and bloating, of course, will cause more leaky gut and inflammatory symptoms in the entire body. And as we know, leaky gut also affects your neurotransmitters. So think about treating someone physiologically as well, not only emotionally, when you're treating them for anxiety and depression. And if you're finding that they have liver symptoms, then use Nux vomica or Lycopodium or Carbo-Veg. Those are three of the main liver remedies that I use. Phosphoric acid, one of my favorite for burnout. This is burnout due to emotional stress, relationship breakups, or overwork. When people who need phosphoric acid, they're in a burnout state that's more indifferent. They're just apathetic and they don't enjoy activities, or they don't pursue activities that they would normally enjoy when they were healthy. And they can also be apathetic towards family members. They're just shut down, right? And they're so shut down, it's hard for them to communicate clearly. And they also suffer from poor memory, a lot of fatigue in their life. So phosphoric acid is great to build them up. And it discharges the type of stress that is holding them down, that is fogging their brain. Of course, it's important to give some tissue salts or some adrenal support while you're using phosphoric acid. Their recovery will be much faster. A key indication of phosphoric acid, or another area where I would use phosphoric acid, is if somebody develops gray hair after grief, trauma, or shock. Phosphoric acid is significantly indicated in people with those symptoms. Pulsatilla, many of our favorite, a remedy for people who are weepy, tearful, and needy. Pulsatilla people are a bit different from Natmure. Pulsatilla people like to be consoled, versus Natmure does not like to be consoled. Pulsatilla people feel pity for themselves, and they actually cry openly instead of hiding it. What Natmure, so Natmure is the one that hides the tears, and Pulsatilla cries more openly. And Pulsatilla people feel very comfortable and relieved when somebody pities them or consoles them, gives them some comfort. Some people will find that Pulsatilla people are quite whiny or clingy, so that's something to look out for. And physically, you'll see that Pulsatilla, the anxiety or depression, or the intensity of emotions decreases for Pulsatilla people when they are exposed to fresh air, or once they're consoled, or after crying. Pulsatilla people feel much better after crying. Sepia, the elixir of the hormonal system. Sepia is a great remedy for women who suffer from emotional issues, especially related to hormonal imbalances. Similar to the acid, some of the acid, sepia is also good for people who are overworked and have become depressed from overwork. Like phosphoric acid, they become apathetic towards family members and activities that they used to like. Sepia people can be quite irritable and they prefer to be left alone. Yeah, so don't try and console them. A notable symptom of sepia is they're quite irritable to people that they're close with. And that's very similar to Lycopodium, actually. Lycopodium picks or is more aggressive towards family members and fears authority. So sepia has a similar picture, yeah, especially irritable towards their spouses. Staph aureus. Think of Staph aureus when a person has been humiliated, criticized, and has shut down. So they really suppress their anger, and I find Staph aureus people appear quite timid most of the time. They suffer from a lot of shame and lack of confidence, so they cannot express anger, they cannot stand up for themselves. And they're sensitive to criticism, which really internalizes their grief. They go deeper into grief and emotional distress when they're criticized, rather than explaining themselves and standing up for themselves. So it's hard to tell that they're in distress because they'll appear pleasant. They're people pleasers. Yeah. Some people are finding, though, that Staph aureus people, because they internalize their emotions so much, they will have those moments of irritability, like a bout of just emotions just rising and letting it out, which is healthy for them at some level. And by giving them the right remedy, this will be more stabilized and they'll be able to dialogue more and explain their feelings and come out of that state of shame about their own feelings. So Stafford's egg, a great remedy for internal grief and humiliation and depression. Great. Those are the main homeopathic remedies I wanted to cover today. And so just to summarize, those remedies that we covered just now, I've given you the remedy picture, and those often come up in emotional issues. I also covered some remedies that you use based on the shock that a person experienced, right? So there's two ways to use homeopathic remedies. One is that the picture that they're presenting, so like a constitutional remedy. And the second way is to use homeopathic remedies that match the type of shock a person went through. And I use both systems at the same time on a person because I feel I want to cover both angles when a person is suffering from significant emotional issues. So let's go on to Bach flower remedies now. Everyone can use Bach flower remedies. They're very easy to use. They're great because they don't suppress your symptoms, and they cover a wide range of symptoms. There's over 30 Bach flower remedies out there for emotions such as guilt, anxiety, fear, jealousy, anger, depression, regretting the past or longing for the past, and also for shock and exhaustion. So even though somebody's taking a homeopathic remedy, sometimes it might take me a while to find the best remedy for them. So I'll often use Bach flower remedies concurrently because Bach flower remedies help manage intense emotions. So if somebody has significant depression and is really overwhelmed by depressed feelings and you need to stabilize them, and if the homeopathic remedy is not working fast enough or you haven't found the right one, then Bach flower remedies are a safe way to go to alleviate some of the symptoms. It peels away a layer of blockage, and the person actually has a better chance to recover. So when I use Bach flower remedies, I combine up to a maximum of 5 remedies together most of the time. So let's look at some remedies for anxiety. Agrimony is a great remedy if the person pretends to be okay and they put on a brave, cheerful face despite the emotional difficulties. But underneath that brave face, of course, there is a lot of distress and anxiety, and they may lay awake at night with stressful thoughts. So, and you can get them to fill out a Bach flower questionnaire to find this out if they don't explain it openly themselves. Aspen is a good remedy for nervousness and anxiety. They have a sense of dread, a sense of anticipation, and there's no real cause for it. They can't pinpoint exactly what's causing them that sense of unease. So they have, what would say, unexplained fears and worries, or fears for unknown reasons. Serato is a good one for people who doubt their own judgment and they can't make decisions, so they're always asking for guidance. They don't trust themselves, which is different from scleranthus. Scleranthus is a lot of indecision. They just can't come up with a decision. And Serato is more, they don't trust in their own judgment. So Serato people will also ask a lot of questions because they've lost their confidence in their own choices. So they're looking for that reassurance. Cherry plum is for people who fear losing control of their mind and body. They have compulsive behaviors, and they know they're wrong, but they just have difficulty controlling these impulses because of their state of vulnerability and weakness. In some cases, they actually fear hurting others or themselves, and they have to put a lot of control, or they feel they have to use a lot of effort to control their thoughts and emotions because they just feel they have no control over them. So great one to use when you see signs of that. Crabapple is good for people who feel ashamed about something they've done or about their body. They feel contaminated by something. So I'll often use it if somebody's done something wrong, sense of guilt, or if even somebody's been sexually abused and they feel dirty or unclean inside, then crab apple is a good remedy to alleviate the intensity of some of these feelings so that they can just cope with life a bit better. So I've used crab apple also in cases with self-abuse, anorexia, and self-mutilation. I also had a great response with arsenicum album homeopathic for cases of self-mutilation. In fact, two of them, two cases of self-mutilation, both were female patients under the age of 20, responded really, really well to arsenicum album 30C. Just to finish off, crab apple is good if for people who worry about themselves. They're obsessed about their weight or a little pimple or blemishes. They're very self-conscious. Crab apple is a great remedy for that. Elm is good if you feel overwhelmed, worn out, and panicky about your responsibilities. So similar to Calcarea carbonica homeopathically. Elm is for people who have taken on too many commitments, too many responsibilities, and there are too many things to deal with. So Elm people will feel that they cannot cope anymore. They're on the edge of burnout. In fact, they're burnt out and they're just on their last thread. So I've actually combined Calcarea carbonica and Elm as well, just to give some management of symptoms. And then after a while, I'll remove Elm or the Bach flower remedies and only use the homeopathic remedy. The next remedy to look at is larch. Larch is a fantastic, fantastic remedy to improve confidence in a person. So people who need larch, they lack confidence, and they lack confidence in their own skills as well. So they won't even try things because they're afraid of failing, which is also similar to lycopodium homeopathically. So 2L remedies. People who need larch are also those people who feel inferior to others because they have a sense that other people are more capable than themselves. So there's a fear of trying and a sense of being less than others. Larch is a great one for that. Coming back to fear remedies, Mimulus is a good one for people who are shy or fear specific issues. Yeah, so we had Aspen, which was for people who fear unknown things or who can't pinpoint what they're afraid of. And Mimulus is for people who can specify what they are afraid of. So they might be afraid of the dark, of spiders, of social gatherings, of flights, or anything like that. Yeah. And they can also have deep-seated fears such as fear of poverty and fear of things going wrong in their life. I would combine Mimulus with Aspen and Larch to give them more confidence and just get ahead out of their anxious state. Olive is a great one for burnout. People who suffer from nervous exhaustion or who have gone through chemotherapy or significant ordeals in their life, long stress. So olive is a great Bach flower remedy to use with phosphoric acid or Calcarea carbonicum as well, just to undo the effects of chronic illness or chronic stress, overwork, or any burnout, whether it's from financial stress, divorce, you name it. So I use olive both in cases for depression and anxiety because depression and anxiety can both come from burnout and adrenal fatigue. The next remedy that we're going to look at is pine. Pine, they feel guilty and blame themselves a lot. This guilt can be quite overwhelming for people and it actually makes them more depressed. So pine helps break the cycle of guilt, yeah, and helps people overcome limiting behaviors. You know, people who feel guilty a lot will limit what they can do in life or limit going forward because they might feel that they don't deserve it or they want to pay back for their misbehavior. Some people, though, remain guilty unnecessarily and they just remain chronically depressed and anxious. So I use pine with that. I often find that I'm using pine with crabapple because there's a feeling of something wrong inside. Red chestnut is a good remedy for anxiety, especially for people who are over anxious about their loved ones or over concerned about others. Yeah, they fear something bad will happen to their family members, and this is a very common symptom. So while you're looking for the specific homeopathic remedy, use red chestnut in conjunction with other Bach flower remedies to reduce these symptoms. At least that way, your patient will be more compliant and also more satisfied and will feel better and will trust in the process. Because if they're not getting any relief at all while you're looking for the best homeopathic remedy for them, your patients might get disappointed and not trust in the process anymore. So look for pine is also, red chestnut is a great one also for parents who worry about their children too much. Rock rose, similar to Star of Bethlehem, which we'll cover later. Rock rose is a good one for people who have experienced something terrifying in their life, like a terrorist attack or a significant accident, or children who have experienced abuse of their parents or of themselves. I've used rock rose for a child who witnessed her mother being beaten by the father. It was very traumatic, and rock rose is a good one to take that child out of the compensatory behavior that they develop after witnessing such terrible scenes in their life. So rock rose people will suffer from extreme terror sometimes and have nightmares, either because they're prone to it or because they've experienced a terrible event in their life. Yeah. So yeah, use rock rose also for people who panic easily, for panic attacks, or become hysterical. The next remedy we're looking at is scleranthus. So this is now for indecision. A lot of uncertainty, hesitancy, can't make up their mind. Yeah, and really these are the people who really feel a lot of stress and anxiety, anguish really, when they're asked to make a decision or when they're forced to make a decision. Yeah. They also don't know how they feel about situations in life, about their life in general, or what they want to do. Right? So they can even go through significant mood swings. They're happy, they're sad, they're really overwhelmed with decision making. Star of Bethlehem is the first remedy of choice when it comes to shock. Great remedy. Use it also with rock rose, but Star of Bethlehem should be definitely part of the mixture that you make when there has been a history of shock. Yeah, so it's really the Bach flower remedy for ailments from shock. I've seen Star of Bethlehem help with even events that happened a long time ago in a person's life. Yeah. So again, childhood trauma, like a terrorist attack, watching of accidents. Star of Bethlehem is really good for that, and you'll see people will recover much faster, even if you give them nutritional supplements. Giving them an energetic remedy for shock just stops the adrenal glands from staying in a state of compensation. Yeah, so Star of Bethlehem will really help the brain rewire itself into a healthier state. Sweet chestnut, great remedy for people who are in significant despair. Yeah, they've reached their limit of endurance and are really in a state of fear, anguish, at the end of their wits. Yeah, sweet chestnut really gives people a lot of hope when they're significantly distressed. So bring this remedy in together with Star of Bethlehem when somebody's really suffering quite badly. I'll also use sweet chestnut for depression. So the mental anguish can be due to anxiety as well as for depression. So keep that in mind. Walnut. Walnut is a great remedy for people who want to break away from old habits, unhealthy relationships, and go through change. Change could be marriage, divorce, finding a new job. Walnut just helps people transition through life much easier. So if somebody's making changes in their life and you've helped them homeopathically or with other Bach flower remedies, and they've got an alleviation of symptoms, give them a large and walnut together to give them the confidence to go through new phases in their life and to make improvements for themselves. White chestnut is the remedy for intrusive thoughts, unwanted thoughts, repetitive thoughts, and great for just people who think, gosh, I can't control these thoughts in my mind. I would also use it for states of paranoia or schizophrenia as well, just to reduce the intensity of those symptoms. Of course, along with the right nutritional supplements and constitutional homeopathic remedy. So people who need white chestnut will complain about mental arguments that go on in their mind, or they might not be able to sleep well because they're worrying too much. So a lot of preoccupation with thoughts. Use white chestnut there. Okay, great. Let's move on to Bach flower remedies for depression. So some of the remedies we've covered in Bach flowers for anxiety also spill over for depression. And I'll point those out for you. So gentian helps people to recover from disappointments and failures in their life. Gentian is great for people who feel discouraged and doubt their ability to succeed after a setback in life. So their depression comes from disappointment. And when they're depressed, it's hard for them to be motivated and succeed again in life. And so they get even more depressed. So look for this pattern. And gentian can really take people out of this self-sabotaging habit or issue. Gorse is number one remedy, along with mustard actually, for depression, especially when somebody feels like giving up and has a sense of despair. They don't see a point in trying anymore, and they've lost hope. So they're really quite discouraged about their own condition. They're quite discouraged about the depression themselves. Honeysuckle is for people who dwell on the past rather than focus on the present. They regret the past, or they just think about somebody they've lost or a dear one, focused on an old breakup. Honeysuckle will help people move away from that sense of loss and reminiscing. It'll help them open their heart to new people in their life, new relationships, new opportunities in their life, and just move forward a bit. Hornbeam, good remedy for depression as well, especially when there's fatigue and lassitude, procrastination, because they just put things off because the task is too overbearing for them. They don't have the stamina, the confidence. They're really in a state of adrenal fatigue. And this is where I'll also use rhodiola in conjunction with hornbeam, because rhodiola gives that oomph, helps people go forward in life and not collapse into apathy or procrastination. Mustard, again, like I said, is one of the best remedies for depression. This is really the depressed feeling, a sense of a dark cloud over their head, a sense of gloominess, lack of joy, chronic sadness, or whether it's for known or unknown reasons. Mustard is the remedy to use in conjunction with other remedies when it comes to depression. Sweet chestnut, like I covered in the section on anxiety, is for a deep sense of mental anguish, a sense of despair, a sense that there's no way out of this depression, right? So you feel overwhelmed, tormented. Really, the soul is suffering here. So sweet chestnuts will relieve this mental anguish and just, stop the overwhelming feeling and give people, I think, the hope to become more positive. Give them a sense of hope. Willow is for people who feel sorry for themselves and live with feelings of resentment, similar to Nat Muir. They feel like life has been unfair to them and others have been benefited without deserving what they're getting. They really resent the success of others because they feel they're the ones who who deserve the prize or the success. So obviously, these resentful feelings will keep a person more depressed and more unsuccessful because they're just preoccupied with other people's business. So willow will help them move away from this self-pitying and self-sabotaging behavior. And so they'll be more accepting of other success, and they'll feel more motivated themselves as well to be successful and just go forward in their life. Great, that brings us to the end of this seminar. Thanks for listening. It's been fantastic working with you. I hope you got a lot out of this, and I hope you've learned how to use homeopathic remedies for treating trauma and shock that happened earlier on in somebody's life, in conjunction with, of course, the remedy the person needs in the moment, the constitutional remedy. Yeah, so please take that message home with you: is treat past events in a person's life to give them better results emotionally in the future. So on my website, dramit.com, there is a Bach flower questionnaire you can fill out. And if your patients need it, or you need a consultation with Bach flowers or any other homeopathic remedy for emotional unwellness, you're welcome to fill out that form and email it to me. I have written a book on anxiety and depression using both psychotherapy, nutrition, and homeopathic remedies. You're also welcome to get that from Amazon or from my website, drmeet.com. So email me if you have any questions, and it'll be great to speak with you. Thanks a lot. Goodbye now.